Kate stood alone at the observation window of the diplomatic vessel Wayward Dawn. Outside, the black of space was filled with ships, hundreds of them, thousands. They came in every shape and size from every corner of the galaxy. Some were sleek and silver, others were rough and organic, grown rather than built. A few seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, their hulls twisting in ways that hurt her eyes to look at. She had been a commander in Earth's small fleet for 15 years. She had seen alien ships before, but never like this. Never so many gathered in one place. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Kate turned. Lieutenant Ben walked up to stand beside her. He was young, maybe 30, with dark hair and tired eyes. He had been assigned as her aide for this mission, though neither of them fully understood why they had been sent at all. "That's one word for it," Kate said. "Terrifying is another." Ben nodded slowly. "The Alone brought 40 vessels, the brought 60, and us. We brought one ship with a crew of 200. "We're observers," Kate reminded him. "That's what they told us. Humanity is too young to participate. We're just here to watch." "Watch what exactly?" Kate pointed toward the center of the gathered fleet. There, hanging in space like a frozen dream, was a station unlike anything else. It was old. Not old like a building or a mountain. Old like a star. Old like time itself. Its surface was covered in symbols that shifted and changed even as she watched. Lights moved within it, slow and patient. "The reliquary," she said, "home of the throne of ascension." Ben had read the briefing files, but reading about something and seeing it were very different things. The reliquary made him feel small. It made him feel like an ant standing before a cathedral. "The throne," he said quietly, "the one that no species has ever claimed." Not for lack of trying. Every 100 years, the Galactic Council holds this ceremony. Species line up to approach it. They believe that whoever sits on the throne will gain the power of the precursors, the ones who built all of this before any current civilization existed. And no one has ever succeeded. No one. The throne ignores most who approach, and those who try to touch it without permission. Kate paused. They don't survive. Ben swallowed hard. "So why are we here? If humanity can't participate, what's the point?" Kate had been asking herself the same question. Earth's government had received the invitation 6 months ago. It had come as a surprise. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years prior. In galactic terms, they were infants. Most of the elder species barely acknowledged their existence. But the invitation had been clear. Humanity was welcome to observe the ceremony. One ship, a small delegation, nothing more. "Politics, probably," Kate said. "The Council wants to remind us of our place, show us how insignificant we are compared to the great empires." The door behind them slid open. Dr. Nora Finch rushed in, clutching a data pad like it contained the secrets of the universe. She was the delegation's science officer, a woman in her 50s who had spent her entire career studying the precursors. Her hair was gray and wild, and her eyes held the gleam of someone who had found something important. "Kate, you need to see this," Nora said breathlessly. Kate took the data pad. On its screen was an image of the throne itself, pulled from the historical archives. It was massive, carved from some black material that seemed to drink in light. Its surface was covered in flowing script. "I've seen the throne before," Kate said. "What am I looking at?" Nora reached over and zoomed in on a section near the base. "Look at these symbols. Really look at them." Kate studied the image. The symbols were strange, alien, but as she stared, something nagged at her memory. The shapes were curved in familiar ways. The patterns reminded her of something she had seen in a museum once, long ago. "Is that," she started. "Cuneiform," Nora whispered. "Ancient Sumerian writing, or something very close to it. Kate, the precursors used symbols that look almost identical to writing systems from ancient Earth." Ben stepped closer. "That's impossible. The precursors died out millions of years before humans even existed. I know, Nora said. I know it's impossible, but there it is. I've checked it against every database we have. The match is too close to be coincidence. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. She looked out the window again, toward the reliquary, toward the throne that had rejected every species for 10,000 years. What does it mean? She asked. Nora shook her head. I don't know, but I think we're here for more than just observation. I think someone or something wanted us to see this. Before Kate could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A cold, crystalline voice filled the air. Attention, all delegations. The ceremony will begin in 1 standard hour. All representatives will proceed to the central chamber of the reliquary. The throne of ascension awaits. Kate looked at her small team. Ben, young and nervous. Nora, brilliant and obsessed. Somewhere on the ship, their security escort, Sergeant Torres, was probably checking her weapons for the 10th time. They were 4 humans in a galaxy that saw them as children. They had no power, no influence, no right to be here. But Kate couldn't shake the feeling that they were exactly where they were supposed to be. Get ready, she told the others. Whatever happens in that chamber, we watch, we learn, and we stay alive. Ben and Nora nodded and hurried away to prepare. Kate stayed at the window a moment longer. The reliquary hung in space before her, ancient and patient. And somewhere deep inside it, a throne that had waited millions of years sat in the darkness. Waiting for something. Maybe waiting for them. She pushed the thought away. It was crazy. Humanity was nothing special, just another young species trying to find its place in a crowded galaxy. But as she walked away from the window, she couldn't help but notice that her hands were trembling, not from fear. From anticipation. The walk through the reliquary was unlike anything Kate had ever experienced. The corridors were wide enough to fit a starship, and the walls seemed to breathe. Not in a way she could see, but in a way she could feel. The air moved in slow rhythms, warm and then cool, as if the station itself was alive. Nora walked beside her, recording everything with a small device. Her eyes were wide, trying to take in details that no human had ever witnessed before. Ben stayed close behind them, his hand never far from the weapon at his hip. Torres brought up the rear, silent and watchful. They were surrounded by aliens. They moved ahead of them, tall crystalline beings that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Their bodies chimed softly as they walked, like wind through glass bells. Their leader, Ambassador Eth, stood nearly 3 meters tall. He had not looked at the humans once since they boarded the station. Behind them came the massive warriors with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. Each one carried weapons openly, a display of strength that the other species tolerated only because of the sacred nature of the ceremony. They floated rather than walked. They were beings of pure thought given physical form, their bodies shifting and changing like clouds. Kate found it hard to look at them directly. Her eyes kept sliding away as if her brain refused to process what it was seeing. There were others too, dozens of species, hundreds of representatives, all moving toward the same destination, the central chamber, the throne room. After what felt like hours of walking, the corridor opened into a space so vast that Kate stopped breathing for a moment. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness. The floor was a single piece of polished black stone, smooth as water, and at the center of it all, raised on a platform of steps, sat the throne. Kate had seen images. She had studied the records, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The throne of ascension was enormous. It was carved from a material that seemed to exist outside of normal space. Looking at it was like looking at a hole in the universe, a place where light went to die. Symbols covered every inch of its surface, flowing and shifting like living things. The air around it was heavy. Kate felt pressure on her chest, on her thoughts. The throne was aware. She didn't know how she knew that, but she was certain of it. The throne was watching them. "The ceremony will now begin," announced an official. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Species will approach in order of galactic seniority. Those who are rejected will withdraw. Those who are accepted—" He paused, and something like hope entered his crystalline voice. "Those who are accepted will claim the inheritance of the precursors." The went first, as was their right. They were the oldest species present, their civilization stretching back nearly 1,000,000 years. Ambassador Eth climbed the steps with absolute confidence. His crystal body gleamed. His head was held high. He reached the throne and stood before it. He raised his arms in the ritual gesture of supplication. Nothing happened. Seconds passed, then minutes. The throne sat there dark and silent. Its symbols did not change. Its lights did not flicker. It simply ignored him as if he were not there at all. After 10 minutes, Eth lowered his arms. His crystal body had dimmed, the light within him fading with his shame. He descended the steps without a word and took his place among his delegation. The went next. Their champion was a warrior named, a being so massive that the floor shook when he walked. He climbed the steps with heavy footfalls and stood before the throne. Nothing. They tried. They sent their most ancient consciousness, a being that had existed for 50,000 years. It floated before the throne, its form shifting through colors and shapes. Nothing. One by one, the elder species approached. The Helix Collective, a hive mind that spoke with 1,000 voices. The merchants of traders who had built an empire on commerce. The Silent Ones, a species that communicated only through thought. Each one was ignored. Each one walked away in defeat. Kate watched it all from the back of the chamber, where the human delegation had been placed. It was the spot reserved for the youngest species, the least important. No one expected them to participate. No one even looked their way. But Kate was not watching the failures. She was watching the throne. Every time a new species approached, something changed. The symbols on the throne's surface shifted slightly. At first, she thought it was random, but as the ceremony continued, she began to see a pattern. She grabbed Nora's arm. "Look at the symbols." Nora aimed her recording device at the throne and the image. Her face went pale. "Kate," she whispered, "those are Earth languages, ancient Earth languages, Sanskrit, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Greek letters." "It's changing," Kate said. "Every time someone fails, the throne changes its symbols, and it's changing them into something human." Ben leaned in. "What does that mean?" Kate didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind was racing, trying to understand something that made no sense. The throne was millions of years old. Humanity had only existed for a few 100,000. There was no connection. There couldn't be. And yet, the throne's symbols continued to shift, and with each shift, they looked more and more familiar, more and more like something Kate could almost read. Then, as the last of the elder species descended in failure, something happened that had never happened before in the entire recorded history of the ceremony. The throne moved. It was slow at first, a grinding of ancient mechanisms, a rotation of the massive seat on its base. The gathered delegates gasped. Some screamed. The guards raised their weapons, not knowing what to point them at. The throne was turning. And when it stopped, it was facing the back of the chamber. It was facing the humans. Kate felt her blood turn to ice. Thousands of alien eyes were suddenly on her tiny delegation, on the 4 humans who had been placed in the position of least importance. The throne's symbols were now entirely in human script, English and Chinese and Arabic and Spanish, flowing across its surface like a river of words. And deep in the heart of the ancient artifact, a light began to glow, golden and warm like a sunrise. Like a welcome. Nora's voice was barely audible. "It's been waiting for us. All this time, it's been waiting for humanity." Kate stared at the throne, at the light that pulsed like a heartbeat. And the throne stared back. The chamber exploded into chaos. Ambassador Eth's voice cut through the noise like breaking glass. Treachery. The humans have done something to the throne. Seize them. Guards rushed toward the human delegation. Kate saw step forward, her weapon raised, ready to fight even though she was hopelessly outnumbered. Ben moved to protect Nora, who was still staring at the throne with wide, unbelieving eyes. But before anyone could reach them, the throne pulsed with light. A wave of energy swept through the chamber. It didn't hurt, it didn't even push. But every being in the room felt it pass through them, warm and ancient and impossibly powerful. The guards froze mid-step. The screaming stopped. Even Ambassador Eth fell silent. And then the throne spoke. Not with sound. The words appeared directly in Kate's mind, in a voice that was both everywhere and nowhere. It was not speaking to the crowd. It was speaking to her alone. Approach, daughter, claim what was left for you. Kate's legs moved before she could think. She pushed past the frozen guards, past the staring aliens, past her own team. She walked toward the throne as if pulled by invisible strings. Part of her was terrified. Part of her felt like she was finally going home. Kate, Ben shouted, "What are you doing?" She couldn't answer. She couldn't stop. The throne was calling her, and something deep in her blood was answering. She reached the base of the steps and began to climb. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of gravity, but because of the weight of what she was about to do. The golden light grew brighter. The symbols flowed faster. Behind her, she heard Eth find his voice again. "This is impossible. This is a trick. Humans are children. They are nothing. They cannot." The throne pulsed again, and the ambassador fell silent. Kate reached the top of the steps. The throne loomed before her, massive and dark and alive. This close, she could see details she had missed from a distance. The carvings weren't just symbols. They were stories. Millions of years of history, written in languages that had died before humanity's ancestors crawled from the sea. And yet she could read them. Somehow, impossibly, she could understand. She saw the precursors as they had been. Beings of light and thought and power, old when the universe was young. She saw them build wonders that modern civilizations couldn't imagine. She saw them spread across the galaxy, seeding life on barren worlds, guiding evolution with careful hands. She saw them come to Earth. The vision hit her like a wave. She saw blue skies and green forests, a world untouched by civilization. She saw the precursors walk among early humans, tall figures of light moving through tribes of confused, frightened people. She saw them teach language, fire, agriculture, the foundations of everything humanity would become. And she saw them leave. Not because they wanted to, because something was coming, something dark and terrible, moving through the spaces between galaxies. The precursors had seen it in their calculations, in the mathematics of cosmic probability, a threat that even they couldn't defeat. So they made a choice. They couldn't fight the darkness, but they could plant seeds that might one day grow into something that could. They chose humanity. They encoded their essence into human DNA, their memories, their potential, their hope, and they built the throne as a key, a way for their children to claim the inheritance when the time was right. Then they left. They transcended physical form and fled into dimensions beyond understanding. They ran from the darkness, hoping that what they left behind would be enough. The vision faded. Kate found herself standing before the throne, tears streaming down her face. She understood now. She understood everything. "We were never alone," she whispered. "They were always with us, inside us." The throne's voice spoke again in her mind. "The time has come. The darkness approaches. You must be ready." Kate reached out and placed her hand on the arm of the throne. The material was warm, not like metal or stone, like skin, like the touch of a parent she had never known. It recognized her. It welcomed her. It had been waiting for this moment for millions of years. Light exploded outward. Kate felt herself change. Not her body, but something deeper. Knowledge flooded into her mind. Technologies that humanity wouldn't have discovered for 10,000 years. Maps of the galaxy showing hidden places, caches of precursor power waiting to be claimed. The locations of other reliquaries, other thrones, other pieces of the inheritance. And something else. Warnings, plans, the details of a threat so vast that it made everything else seem small. When the light faded, Kate was sitting on the throne. It had accepted her. It had chosen her. She looked down at her hands. Symbols traced across her skin, the same symbols that covered the throne. They glowed softly, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She could feel the station around her, feel the ships floating in space outside, feel the minds of every being in the chamber. She could feel everything. The chamber was utterly silent. Thousands of aliens stared at her with expressions ranging from terror to awe. They had fallen to their knees. The warriors had dropped their weapons. Even the had stopped shifting, their forms frozen in shock. Nora was crying. Ben had his mouth open but couldn't speak, stood with her weapon still raised, as if she didn't know whether to protect Kate or run from her. Ambassador Eth's voice was barely a whisper. "What have you become?" Kate looked at him. Her eyes were different now, deeper, older. They held knowledge that no human had ever possessed, memories that stretched back to the dawn of time. "I have become what humanity was always meant to be," she said. Her voice echoed strangely, carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "The inheritors, the gardeners, the last line of defense." She paused, feeling the weight of what she now knew. "And I'm not sure that's a good thing." Because the throne had shown her one more thing, one final piece of the puzzle. The darkness the precursors had feared, the threat they had run from. It was coming, and it was almost here. The days that followed were a blur of chaos and confusion. Kate descended from the throne after what felt like hours, though the station's records would later show she had sat there for only 12 minutes. The symbols on her skin had faded to faint traces, visible only in certain light. The throne itself had gone dark again, its ancient mechanisms returning to sleep. But she was not the same. She would never be the same again. The alien delegations were in an uproar. Some demanded that the humans be arrested, claiming that the ceremony had been corrupted. Others wanted to study Kate, to cut her open and see what had changed inside her. A few, mostly the younger species, looked at her with something like hope. Ambassador Eth led the opposition. He stood before the Galactic Council, his crystal body blazing with angry light, and argued that humanity had somehow cheated. The precursors would never choose such a primitive species. The throne must have malfunctioned. The ceremony must be repeated. But the council was split. The records were clear. The throne had moved. It had spoken. It had accepted a human for the first time in recorded history. Whatever had happened, it was real. Kate let them argue. She had larger concerns. The throne had given her knowledge, but it had also given her a burden. She now knew things that no one else knew. She understood the shape of the darkness that was coming, the nature of the threat that had driven the precursors to such desperate measures. And she knew that humanity was not ready. On the third day, she called her team together in the private quarters of the Wayward Dawn. Ben, Nora, and sat around a small table while Kate stood by the window, looking out at the stars. "I need to tell you what I saw," she said quietly, "what the throne showed me." She told them everything: the precursors, the seeding of humanity, the inheritance encoded in human DNA. She told them about the caches hidden across the galaxy, the technologies waiting to be claimed. She told them about the darkness. When she finished, the room was silent. Ben spoke first. "You're saying that everything we thought we knew about human history is wrong, that we were designed, created." "Guided," Kate corrected. "The precursors didn't create humanity, they found us. They saw potential in our ancestors and helped it grow. They gave us pieces of themselves built into our very cells. Every myth about gods walking among men, every legend of beings from the sky teaching ancient peoples. They were memories, echoes of the truth. Nora was furiously taking notes. The archaeological implications alone, the linguistic connections I found in the throne's symbols, it all makes sense now. The precursors didn't just influence us. They were us, in a way. They made sure that we would carry their legacy forward. Had been quiet throughout the explanation. Now she leaned forward, her soldier's eyes fixed on Kate. What about this darkness you mentioned? What exactly are we supposed to be defending against? Kate hesitated. This was the part that scared her most. The precursors called it the void. It's not a species or an empire, it's more like a force of nature. A wave of entropy that moves between galaxies, consuming everything in its path. Stars, planets, entire civilizations. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't communicate, it just ends things. And the precursors couldn't stop it, Ben asked. They tried. For millions of years they fought it. But the void can't be destroyed. It can only be delayed. The precursors bought time by seeding life across the cosmos, creating species that might one day find a solution they couldn't. Then they transcended, hopping to escape. But they knew the void would eventually reach their gardens. Reach Earth, Nora said softly. Reach Earth, Kate confirmed. The throne showed me patterns. The void moves slowly, but it moves constantly. Based on the precursor's calculations, it should reach the edge of our galaxy within the next century, maybe sooner. The weight of her words settled over the room like a fog. Broke the silence, so what do we do? Kate turned from the window. For the first time since the ceremony, she allowed herself to feel the enormity of what had happened. She was still Kate, a human woman who liked coffee and disliked early mornings. But she was also something more now, something new. We go home, she said. We tell Earth what we've learned, and we start preparing. Preparing how? Ben asked. If the precursors themselves couldn't stop this void, what chance do we have? I don't know yet, but the throne gave me locations. Hundreds of hidden caches, reliquaries like this one, scattered across the galaxy. Technologies and weapons and knowledge that the precursors left behind. If we can reach them, if we can claim them like we claimed this throne. We might have a chance, Nora finished. Kate nodded. A chance is all we've ever had. It's all anyone ever has. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Kate spent most of it in her quarters, sorting through the vast library of knowledge that the throne had planted in her mind. It was overwhelming. She would be working through it for years, maybe decades. She also discovered something else. The throne was not gone. It had become part of her. When she concentrated, she could feel it wrapped around her thoughts, a presence that was both separate and inseparable. And with a thought, she could make it manifest. The massive throne could compress itself into a small device, a band that wrapped around her wrist like a piece of jewelry. It was still connected to the reliquary, to the network of precursor technology spread across the stars. Through it, she could access information, send signals, activate dormant systems. She was, in a very real sense, humanity's first ambassador to an inheritance they hadn't known existed. When the wayward dawn finally emerged from faster-than-light travel above Earth, Kate stood on the bridge and looked down at the blue planet below. Her planet, her people, her responsibility. The world governments had been informed, of course. Faster-than-light communication had allowed the ship to send updates throughout the journey. Earth knew what had happened at the reliquary. They knew about the throne, about Kate, about the darkness coming from beyond the stars. They were waiting for her, all of them. Billions of people looking up at the sky, wondering what it meant. Kate didn't have all the answers. She didn't have most of them. But she had something the precursors had left behind. Not just knowledge or technology, something simpler. Hope. The hope that humanity could succeed where even the precursors had failed. the hope that the garden they had planted would grow strong enough to survive the coming frost. She took a deep breath and gave the order to begin descent. It was time to face her people and tell them the truth. Everything was about to change. Kate stood at the podium in the Great Hall of the United Nations. Before her sat every world leader, every ambassador, every person who held power on Earth. Around the edges of the room, cameras broadcast her image to billions of screens across the planet. And floating above it all, holographic displays showed the faces of alien ambassadors watching from across the galaxy. 3 months had passed since the ceremony at the reliquary. 3 months of tests, examinations, debates, and arguments. Some people called Kate a prophet. Others called her a fraud. A few had tried to kill her, believing that what she carried was too dangerous for any human to possess. But she was still here, still standing, and now it was time to speak. "I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers," she began. Her voice was steady, but she could feel the weight of every eye upon her. 3 months ago, I was a military officer. I had a job, a routine, a life that made sense. Then I touched an ancient throne and everything changed. She raised her left hand. The throne's physical form shimmered into existence around her wrist, a band of dark material covered in glowing symbols. The audience gasped. This is the inheritance of the precursors, the beings who guided humanity's development millions of years before we knew we were being guided. They left us this technology, this knowledge, this power, and they left us a warning. She waved her hand and the holographic displays changed. They showed a map of the galaxy, vast and beautiful. Then they showed the edge of the map where stars were going dark. One by one, lights were vanishing, swallowed by something that the display couldn't render. They called it the void. It's not an enemy we can negotiate with or a threat we can reason with. It's entropy given form. It consumes everything it touches, and it's been moving toward us for millions of years. The room erupted in frightened murmurs. Kate waited for silence before continuing. The precursors fought it. They failed. But before they left, they planted seeds across the cosmos. They created species that might succeed where they didn't. We were one of those seeds. We were meant to face this darkness. Dr. Nora Finch stepped forward, taking her place beside Kate. She had been leading the scientific analysis of the throne's data archives, coordinating teams across the globe. "We've identified over 300 hidden caches throughout the galaxy," Nora explained. "Technologies that could solve problems we haven't even imagined yet. Medical advances, energy sources, weapons." She paused. "Yes, weapons. The kind that the precursors themselves were afraid to use." "We've also learned something else," Kate added. "The void moves slowly on a cosmic scale. The precursors believed we had centuries to prepare, maybe longer, but they were wrong about something." She changed the display again. This time it showed a closer view of the galaxy's edge, with data overlays marking detection points. "Our monitoring stations at the edge of known space have been tracking something unusual for the past 3 weeks. Stars going dark, one after another, in a pattern that suggests deliberate movement. The void isn't just drifting toward us. Part of it is coming straight for us, and it's moving faster than the precursors predicted." Silence, complete and total silence. A voice rose from the audience. Kate recognized the speaker as the representative from China, a woman named Zhou who had been one of the loudest voices opposing Kate's claims. "How long do we have?" she asked. Kate felt the throne pulse against her wrist, calculations flowing through her mind. At its current rate, the edge of the void will reach the outer colonies in 40 years. It will reach Earth in approximately 70. 70 years. A human lifetime. Long enough that many people in this room would never see it, but short enough that their children and would face the end of everything. Ben stood at the side of the hall, watching Kate with a mixture of pride and worry. Tors was stationed near the exits, her hand resting on her weapon out of habit. They had been through so much together in these 3 months. They were her team, her friends, her family. Kate looked out at the sea of faces before her. She saw fear, she saw doubt, she saw anger. But she also saw something else. A spark in some eyes, a straightening of some shoulders. The same stubborn refusal to give up that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and wars. "I'm not going to tell you that we can definitely win," she said. "I'm not going to promise that everything will be okay. The precursors were older and wiser than us, and even they couldn't stop the void completely. All they could do was buy time and hope." She stepped out from behind the podium, the throne glowing softly at her wrist. "But hope is something humans understand. We've been hopping for as long as we've existed, hopping that tomorrow will be better than today, hopping that our children will have a better life than we did, hopping that when the darkness comes, we'll find a way to light a candle." She looked directly into the nearest camera, speaking now not just to the leaders in the room, but to every person watching across the globe. "The galaxy has spent centuries thinking we were too young, too primitive, too small to matter. They looked at us and saw children playing with toys while the adults ran the universe. But the precursors saw something different. They saw survivors. They saw fighters. They saw a species that refuses to give up, no matter how bad things get." Her voice rose, carrying across the hall. "They chose us. Out of all the species they could have given their inheritance to, they chose humanity. Not because we're perfect, not because we're powerful, because we're stubborn, because when we fall down, we get back up, because when the universe tells us something is impossible, we try it anyway." She raised her wrist, and the throne responded to her will. Light flowed outward, warm and golden, touching every person in the room. For a moment, they all felt it, the connection to something ancient and vast, the weight of an inheritance they had never asked for but could not refuse. "I can't do this alone. The throne gave me knowledge, but knowledge isn't enough. I need scientists to understand what the precursors left us. I need engineers to build what they designed. I need soldiers to protect what we create. I need leaders who can unite the world instead of dividing it." She looked around the room, meeting eyes from every nation, every culture, every corner of Earth. "The void is coming. We have 70 years to prepare. 70 years to become something greater than we've ever been. 70 years to prove that the precursors were right to believe in us." She paused, letting the words settle. "So what do you say? Are we going to sit here and argue about who should be in charge? Are we going to fight each other while the darkness approaches? Or are we going to do what humans have always done when our backs are against the wall?" She smiled, and despite everything, despite the fear and the uncertainty and the weight of the universe on her shoulders, the smile was genuine. "Are we going to fight?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then Ben started clapping. The sound echoed in the great hall, lonely at first, joined him. Then Nora. Then Representative Joe, who had questioned Kate just minutes before. The applause spread like fire. It rose from the floor of the hall and swept through the seats, growing louder and louder until the walls themselves seemed to shake with it. Kate stood in the center of the storm, the throne humming at her wrist, the weight of the future pressing down on her. She didn't know if they would succeed. She didn't know if anything she did would matter in the end. But she knew one thing. Humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. Whatever came, whatever horrors waited at the edge of the stars, they would face it together. They would fight with everything they had, every tool and weapon, an ounce of stubborn determination their species possessed. And if they fell, they would fall standing. The applause continued, washing over her like a wave. Outside the windows, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A new day was coming, and humanity would be ready to meet it.